Have you ever wondered what happens when you close your eyes and drift off to sleep? Do we gain access to an alternate reality that allows us to see things that will be, things that could be, or even things that are in some kind of parallel existence? Do dreams allow us to access parts of our brain that know more than our conscious mind is even aware of? Or do our brains spend that time processing our experiences and emotions, allowing us to better cope with the world we live in? Today, I want to explore the world of dreams and those short realities we live in while we're unconscious. Like scrolling through YouTube shorts or TikTok videos, dreams can be scary, funny, insightful, or just plain confusing. But one thing is certain, we dedicate a lot of thought and attention to those crazy little stories our brain cooks up, even if we often forget about them within seconds of waking. Some dreams can stick with us for a long time for any number of reasons, and one thing is certain, they can have a big impact on how we see the world we live in. So join me as I try to discover where dreams come from, why we often forget dreams, why some of us feel like we don't dream, and most importantly, by answering those questions, we can hopefully figure out what they mean. As overdone as this is, I'd like to start with how the word dream is defined. According to the Oxford Dictionary, the word dream can have two meanings. The first is a series of thoughts, images and sensations occurring in a person's mind during sleep, and the second is a cherished aspiration, ambition or ideal. Now, both of these definitions share one thing in common. They both take place in our brain. One in the conscious mind, the other in the unconscious. So I'd like to start by looking at where these two overlap and if this overlap can tell us anything about the origin of dreams. So let's begin with the easier one, conscious thoughts and where they're processed in the brain. Thankfully, this does have a definitive and relatively simple answer. Due to hundreds of years of study and more recent technological advances, we know that the frontal lobe, as the name suggests, is part of the brain located at the front of the skull, and this is the part of the brain that deals with movement, speaking, and most importantly, memory and thinking. Logically, it makes sense for memory and conscious thoughts to be processed by the same area of the brain, as the two can be hard to separate. We think about our memories and remember our thoughts, and the two often influence each other. That's an important thing to remember about the brain as we go on this journey. It can influence itself. So as we remember things about our lives, TV shows, books we read, or conversations we've had, it can give us ideas. Sometimes really good ideas, ideas that stick with us, make us happy or excited, sad and scared, and that can sometimes stimulate other parts of our brain. Located behind the frontal lobe, we find the temporal lobe, and this deals mostly with hearing, learning and feelings. So when we have these memories that we spend time thinking about, it can stir up emotions. We stimulate two of the largest parts of our brain and trigger small cells within called neurons. These neurons can create connections between themselves like little shortcuts. And the more often we do this, the stronger these bridges become. Neurons that fire together often wire together. This happens subconsciously without us even realizing what's going on, even while we sleep. As you're probably noticing, this is leading us nicely towards the other definition of dreams. A series of thoughts, images and sensations occurring in a person's mind during sleep. So far, we've touched on all of those elements in our waking brains. Thoughts, mental images, sensations and emotions. The only part we haven't discussed yet is why these things happen when we aren't in control of our thoughts. And for those of you that are interested, we will get to lucid dreaming later in the video. So, as we've established, the more a thought is present in our mind, the stronger the connections relating to that thought can become. These strong connections are still there while we sleep, and it stands to reason the stronger the connection, the more likely it will be that our brain spends time exploring that idea. But that only accounts for a small percent of the dreams we might have. And I'm sure some of you right now are thinking of a dream you've had that seemed to come completely out of nowhere, and was about something you'd given almost no thought to at the time. This is where the temporal lobe comes into play. As you might remember, this is the part of the brain that deals with emotions and learning amongst other things, which in and of itself is quite interesting, as it suggests that a lot of how we learn is based on emotion. And I'm sure a lot of us can agree that some of the biggest lessons we've learned in life have a very strong emotion linked to them. For example, we might have made some kind of mistake that's caused ourselves or others to feel upset. This can create links in our brain that even though we don't spend a lot of time thinking about it, it's still there, becoming a piece of a puzzle our brains can use while we dream. This link might also share connections with other lessons we've learned in life with their own emotions attached to them, and this can repeat, linking to other lessons we've learned, to the point where each thought, emotion or lesson learned is part of a huge interconnected web of neurons all linked together. So a dream that might start out with a simple thought could travel around all these chains of neurons and connections to end up in places you haven't consciously spent much time, which is why dreams can often take place in old environments we haven't seen in a long time, such as childhood homes, schools, perhaps even talking with someone you haven't seen in a very long time. So this is where we start to drift away from hard science and start looking into theories and ideas. But that being said, if you have any theories or ideas as to why we dream, please feel free to talk about it in the comments, or even if you've had any strange dreams in the past, leave it below and we can discuss what that might mean. So, why do we dream? As we've established, dreams seem to come from parts of the brain that have connections between them and might share some common themes. But why do we do it? What part of being human needs us to create these mad little stories? One theory is that we use sleep as a chance to prepare for the next day while we rest. While parts of our brain shut down, we can use the rest to imagine what tomorrow might bring. We can't predict the future, but we can go over trends and themes in our lives and think about where they have ended up in the past to give us a rough idea where we might end up. This is believed to be where déjà vu comes from. We might dream something that happens to us and it actually seems to come true, almost as if you've seen into the future. To put this in an evolutionary sense, imagine you're an early human living in a world where you aren't at the top of the food chain and any number of animals could see you as lunch. You'd spend a lot of time trying to think of ways to keep yourself and your children safe. One night you have a dream, you're walking through a familiar forest you've walked 1,000 times, but this time a large tiger jumps out from behind a bush and tries to attack you. Scary stuff. Scary enough to elicit a fear emotion in you, a pretty strong one at that. This would put you on edge every time you walk through that forest, potentially keeping you just on edge enough to be ready if such a thing were to happen. This would allow you to safely learn a valuable life lesson without having to experience it for real. Now in the modern day, this isn't exactly needed in our day-to-day lives, and has led to a theory that we might have remembered a lot more of our dreams in the past for our own survival. But as the modern world becomes a safer place, we dedicate less of our valuable memory to remembering dreams and more of it to remembering more important things, like unique passwords for email that need upper and lowercase letters, a number, a special character that we totally don't use for everything else as well. That being said, of course we do still remember some of our dream, as it can still be useful in the modern world. For example, you have a dream where you're hit by a car, so you take more care around busy roads. Or in a much more terrifying example, you have a dream where you get caught in a flaming building, therefore you start to take more care to look for fire escapes when you're in a new environment. In this context, dreams make a lot of sense as to why we have them, but why else might we forget a lot of our dreams if they can still be helpful to us? Another theory as to why some people don't remember dreams or feel like they didn't dream at all takes us back to those linked neurons from before. Since neurons that fire together create a stronger link or stronger memory, it stands to reason that the link created briefly in a dream won't have a strong connection to us, and it becomes harder to recall after waking up. For example, if you dream about walking down a street and the street becomes a river that flows in the shape of a clown, you aren't likely to remember this. This has no connection to the real world around you, and your brain won't easily recall it, unless it elicits some kind of strong emotional link. Another example would be if you're walking down a street and the road turns into a river, but you then try and cross the river and get swept away, you're a lot more likely to remember this, as it will have a strong emotional connection to fear. Another factor in remembering dreams can be drug use or damage to the brain, and both of these cause this effect in a similar way. As someone who's had a history of drug use in the past, I can attest to the fact that some drugs can completely block the ability to remember dreams. And when the drugs are no longer present, the dreams can come back stranger and more frequent than ever. The exact reasons for this are long and complicated, and I'll put a link to an article from the Scientific Journal of Nature relating to neuropsychopharmacology in the description below. But to sum it up as best as I can, it mostly relates to how some drugs affect the brain's ability to form memories and maintain a regular sleep cycle. And as we have already established, these factors can be essential for remembering and even forming dreams in the first place, given that we know that we need to be able to form links in our brain in order to dream. It also leads us nicely onto the phenomenon of lucid dreaming and how to do it. So firstly, what is lucid dreaming? To put it simply, lucid dreaming is the ability to recognise when you're in a dream state and unlocking the techniques that allow you to control the content and actions of your dream. If you look online about how to lucid dream, it simply revolves around the idea of creating a strong link in your brain you can recognise while you're asleep to cue your brain into realising you're dreaming. And with regular repetition of this, you can create a bridge in your brain that allows you to take control. I have never practiced this, however, I have had one case where I realised I was dreaming, but this just made me wake up, which was pretty disappointing, as it was the point I'd just pulled a large diamond as big as my head from inside my pocket. Here is where I'd like to include some more information about dreams that I couldn't fit into the script in a natural way, but I think you might appreciate. For a long time, it was believed that we only had dreams during REM or REM sleep. Yes, this is where the band gets its name from. Now, REM stands for Rapid Eye Movement, and it's a stage in sleep where the brain, and strangely enough the eyes, undergo a lot of activity. This, however, is under debate, and is now widely believed that we can dream in most stages of sleep. A lot of people used to dream in black and white. This was mostly reported during the time of early TV popularity, and reports decreased as colour TV became more prevalent around people's homes. As you've probably figured out, this is because the way people were taking in new ideas and stories was through a black and white screen, which shaped how their brains created new stories and narratives in their head. It's also why a lot of people who are blind from birth report dreaming without images and exclusively dream with sounds, smells and touch. While we sleep, we're paralysed. This stops us from acting out our dreams, as when we dream we can't tell that we're asleep, and our brains would translate what we do into movement if we weren't paralysed. Of course, this can go wrong in two key ways. Firstly, we can bypass this paralysed state and act out our dreams, commonly known as sleepwalking. I've never been a sleepwalker, but I do have one story from when I was a child that I still remember. I don't know if any of you out there will remember Street Sharks, a very 90s cartoon from my childhood, based around 4 anthropomorphic sharks made sentient by an evil doctor. In this dream, I was fighting alongside these sharks to save the day. As part of this epic battle, I attacked an evil crab monster, pulling off one of his claws before running behind some cover to avoid the lasers being shot my way in retaliation. However, once I got behind a low wall, something was telling me not to duck down. Despite my sharky mates telling me to do so, no matter how much I wanted to duck down, something inside me was screaming, "Don't do it." It was at this point I woke up. The claw on my arms was now a teddy bear, and I was leant over the side of my bunk bed, of which I was on the top bunk. That voice in my head telling me not to duck down knew that if I did so, I would have fallen to the floor. A bit of a tangent, but an interesting insight into how our conscious and unconscious brains can overlap, an early memory starting me on a path of fascination with the world of dreams. Now, the other side of sleep paralysis is of course waking sleep paralysis, often linked with some particularly scary waking dreams. This is where the body, although awake, still hasn't shed its paralytic state, and the unfortunate subjects of this phenomenon are laid in bed unable to move. This is often paired with seeing or feeling a demonic or supernatural presence, accompanied with an intense fear or dread. Most likely, this is a fear response, as the brain doesn't know why it can't move, and will often attribute this to something external. There are a lot of very spooky stories online about people's personal experiences with this phenomenon, and if you feel like losing some sleep, have a look online. Although I don't recommend it, since as we now know, thinking about something too much makes it more likely to creep into your dreams. One last fact I'd like to leave you on today is that dreams can renew your creativity. It's probably no surprise knowing what we know now about dreams, but letting your brain go off on these wild stories, exploring pathways in our brain that we might have long forgotten about, can help us be creative in a lot of exciting ways. I, for one, figured out that I could play guitar by ear from a dream, without needing sheet music or guitar tablature to learn new parts. It was a short and simple dream where a friend of mine was teaching me how to play the opening melody to Trivium's Pull Harder on the Strings of Your Mater. And as I woke up, I reached for my guitar and realised I could play it. At the time, I wanted to attribute this to something a lot more special and magical than I now know it to be. Now I know it was simply a case of my brain taking connections from hearing it countless times, and my new pathways made from learning the instrument and simply combining the two to make a new connection while I slept. But it goes to show that dreams can help us unlock a new level of creativity we didn't even know we were capable of. So I hope you've enjoyed my first video diving into the world of dreams and what they might mean to us as people. If you've had an interesting dream lately, or have any ideas as to why we might dream, please put them in the comments so we can discuss this fascinating world of sleep. If you enjoyed this video, please do press the like button, and if you didn't, don't be shy, hit the dislike button and tell me why below. Especially since this is my first video, I'm aware that there is a lot of room for improvement. And if you want to see more of my content, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. I also make music, so a link to that will be in the description below. So until next time, sleep well, and remember just how fascinating our brains are.